Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Seigel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Welcome back to this episode. We are talking about the most common leadership flaws in today's private practice environment. And I think this is something so critical because we don't recognize the common flaws that are shaping the way that our employees function on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's really important that we look at the following deficits. So here are, about 10 different flaws that I'm seeing, or deficits, whatever you want to call it. So the first I'm finding I'm seeing there's a lack of clear vision and communication in leaders. So managers are failing to articulate where we're going, what we're trying to accomplish. They're leaving employees confused about the priorities and the direction. So we are often shaping what we want the purpose to be, and we're mixing up. There's a difference between vision, goals, purpose. And so our purpose is often in alignment with the mission. And that's why we do what we do. Our vision and our goals are where we're going and how we're going to get there. And I often find that leadership is flawed in having that clear communication, what it's taking. And so imagine if you were able to get so finite where you said, here's our purpose, our mission. Our vision for this month is to deliver 3,850 appointments. And through that appointment accomplishment, we're going to be able to deliver 36 discharges, whatever that is, clear, tangible vision of the goals. And then breaking that down for every single person's role, function, expectation, and accountability. Every day you're not here is a day we can't get this done. And unless we have someone to cover your role, that's a deficit in our organization. So how we cover each other is crucial because these are team goals, not individual goals. But each individual has a responsibility to fulfill their obligation to the team. So having that clear communication is crucial. Number 2 deficit, micromanaging. Over-controlling tasks, not trusting staff to handle responsibilities, stifles creativity, lowers morale, reduces efficiency. This is common in small practices where managers feel personally invested in every detail. Number 3, poor delegation skills. We're failing to delegate. We're failing to actually show and hold others responsible. So we're hoarding tasks. We're not assigning them. We don't have the proper guidance when we are assigning them. And it's leading to burnout, not just for the managers, but underutilized staff. There's not a clear structure to deciphering responsibilities between the organization. The next flaw I'm seeing is inadequate emotional intelligence, EQ. We're struggling. And what we find is that we may empathize with employees, but we're not able to manage the conflicts. And it's creating a toxic work environment. And it includes dismissing staff concerns, failing to recognize contributions, etc. And so I always say this statement, which is truly the weakest link is what destroys us. And all it takes is 1 ounce of toxicity and your water table is broken. So how are you measuring with emotional intelligence? When someone comes in, how they function, you got to pick up on that. The other thing I'm seeing is a resistance to change. Change creates work for managers. Many managers cling to outdated processes, technologies, fearing disruption, which hinders growth and competitiveness in a rapid evolving industry. And I just had this happen with a practice that we support on the medical billing side. So when we approach medical billing with a practice, we become the revenue cycle officer and we assess the way that their operations functions. And within that, that's their intake process. We're looking at all these different layers. So my chief billing officer was meeting and was like, hey, these are all the things you need to do. And the intake manager was like, well, we've been doing it this way and we haven't had complaints. I go, complaints does not mean that it doesn't work. Here are the 5 reasons why it's inefficient. And the employee's like, well, I like the way it is. And this is the way we do it. And I basically said to the owner, I said, I will be very transparent. We don't have to be a right fit for you, but in order for me to do what I need to do, it needs to function in this way and it's going to benefit you. The owner said, I agree with everything you're saying, and this person's just not embracing change. The employee cried, literally cried. So I say, are they on board or not? It took 3 weeks of fighting. 6 weeks later, that employee just said the change has dramatically influenced their life. I said, why were you hesitant to the change? And this is what she said. I felt like you were replacing my value by streamlining and taking 90% of my effort off of me because I found value in the tasks I completed, not in the way that I drove change in our organization. I said, your value is not in task accomplishment. It is in the way that you oversee and lead an organization through processes. Your value is far greater when you're not clicking 500 clicks a day. Put responsibility on others. Change the way that you function in order to do more with less. So crucial. Fight back. Don't let leaders resist change. Now let them voice what scares them. See, she could not articulate at the time that she felt threatened because she did not know how to value her role. Because we were changing so much, she was worried we were trying to eliminate her role. And that was a byproduct of her not understanding the way that we value her. Now, something that my mother-in-law taught me, and I think it was an interesting lesson, because one day I was trying to pivot a manager and the manager couldn't have it. And my mother-in-law said that the only way that this manager would embrace the change is if I replaced everything I was taking off of them with some higher action-oriented purpose. They had to see the way that their time would be spent when I'm eliminating all these things they were doing. And the minute I was able to show them the opportunity of the way they would spend their time and how they would be more valuable as a result, that manager was now able to embrace that change. Show the employee where their time will be focused and how this change creates more value for them to the organization and overall more value to the organization. Another deficit that I'm seeing is that we are neglecting employee development. We are focusing solely on immediate tasks without investing in training, what that growth looks like. There's a disengagement and high turnover because, I get back to that, employees are not feeling progress. Progress is more than money. Progress is function. How do they enhance the way that they do things? How can they create more value? How can they change in a positive way to feel that their development is enhancing? And I say it this way. If a employee at the grocer is in charge of bagging groceries, do you feel there's still an opportunity for them to develop as an employee? I do. Let's develop how they can communicate with employees when they bag groceries. Let's develop them in the efficiency of how many bags they can do. Let's develop them in a way of things they can do when there aren't a need for bagging groceries. All different ways. Multi-training and task training and all those different things. So neglecting employee development is a huge flaw I'm seeing in leaders. Another one is inconsistent decision making. I am seeing this a lot. Our decision making is not thorough. There's no roadmap to decision making, and we're making reactive decisions. We're making arbitrary decisions without a structured process, and it erodes trust and it creates an uncertainty among employees. So We need to improve the way that we are doing data-driven decision making. The next deficit I'm seeing is failure to lead by example. We're sticking managers in an office, and managers who don't model the work ethic, professionalism, or values they expect from their team, and they lose credibility and respect. I want our leaders and our managers there, really embodying day-to-day work. The other deficit I see is we overemphasize short-term results. We're so focused on prioritizing immediate that we're losing sight on the long-term strategy. That could be client relationships, staff well-being. We can harm our practice's sustainability. So I know it could sound like a contradiction because at times I'm like, we got to produce racehorses. You need to build a business algorithm based on sustainability. What is that sustainability? What is that margin? What's that opportunity? And how do people flex between high production, mid-production? What is low production? What does that look like? The last flaw I want to highlight in this episode is weak conflict resolution skills. We are seeing a lot of people pleaser leadership. We're seeing avoidance. We're mishandling conflicts, whether it's between staff, clients, whatnot. We're allowing issues to fester. It's disrupting workplace harmony because we're allowing conflict to fester. We got to nip it in the butt from the beginning. So there's a lack of communication. In that lack of communication, which is a critical leadership flaw, small business private practice managers are ultimately undermining team cohesion, operational efficiency, and organizational success. Here are some examples of a lack of communication and the way that I am seeing it affect private practices. So we're seeing a lot of confusion, ambiguity. Without clear communication, employees are uncertain about goals, roles, priorities. It's leading to misaligned efforts and wasted resources. There's a low morale and engagement happening when managers fail to share feedback, recognition, or updates. Staff feel undervalued and disconnected. They reduce motivation and productivity. I just had this with an employee at one of my clients. This employee, one, did not take ownership, but two, we had 16 meetings, 16, written, discussed, everything. And it was like amnesia effect. I was like, your performance continues to not be at a level of expectation. Well, I don't see how that's been brought to me. I'm like, what about this? What about that? And it was deflecting and all those things. And ultimately, the communication is a two-way flow. So when you are expecting an employee to understand their performance is less than desirable, they must acknowledge it. Do you feel your performance is an 8 out of 10 or better? Yes. Do you feel that we feel your performance is an 8 or 10 or better? No. So what I see and what you see is different. And then I got to show examples. Here's an example. Did this occur? Yes. Do you feel that's an 8 or 10? No. Okay, so it's below 8 or 10. Yes. Okay, here's another. Do you feel? Yes. Then they're like, well, you're only showing the things that I'm highlighting low. And I go, so do you feel that the things that you are highlighting high overpower these issues? Again, this is part of that communication. Well, yeah. So what are the things that you think you're doing well? Well, employees like me. Is that the number one priority? Well, I think it is. They have to like me. So you're valuing likeness over performance of function. Well, you don't get it. See, these are all the things. This is where communication, we got to do that. Now, the problem is in this case, this employee, their toxicity. So their low morale and engagement, if they can't take it because we missed the mark early on. We waited 7 years. This practice let it fester. So what happened is 7 years of non-confront led to an employee that felt the employee no longer is valued. And they don't see because they think for 7 years they were doing a great job. The minute someone is underperforming, write it out. The other thing with a lack of communication is mistrust and conflict. Poor communication breeds misunderstanding, rumors, assumptions. It erodes trust between the managers and among colleagues. We're also seeing a lack of communication create inefficient problem solving. Issues escalate when managers don't foster open dialogue. We're delaying resolution, we're impacting client satisfaction, and the practice operations is like a car with one tire. It's off, missing 3 tires. The last, and this is the most important, when leadership is not having open dialogue, transparent communication, we're missing out on opportunities. We have a failure to communicate our practices, vision, strategy limits, employee buy-in, and it's hindering our innovation and our growth initiatives. Plain and simple. So, as we look at these weakness areas, here are some strategies for coaching leaders to improve communication. One is I want you to assess the current communication style. Use a tool like 360-degree feedback, a communication style assessment like the DISC or the Myers-Briggs. Utilize this to identify managers' strengths and gaps. The goal? We want to help them understand how their communication is perceived. Overly directive, vague, infrequent, etc. And the impact it has on the team. Coaching tip. I want you to review feedback in a safe, non-judgmental setting. I want you to focus on specific examples. Your team noted you rarely clarify task deadlines. That's a very specific example. Bring it into this team, etc. The next strategy is I want you to set clear communication expectations. Work with managers to define what effective communication looks like in their role. Regular team updates, one-on-one checks, clear task management, etc. The goal is to create a framework for consistent, transparent, and inclusive communication. Develop communication, outlining frequency methods. What do meetings look like? What do emails? What's the tone? How do we tailor this to the practice's needs? All things that should be looked at. The next strategy is active listening skills. We have to practice them. Train the manager to just show up and listen. Ask open-ended questions. Maintain eye contact. Foster and nurture an opportunity for others to speak. Ensure that the employees feel heard, valued, fostering trust and collaboration. One of the things I like to do is role play. And I like to role play on an employee level. How do we create an area of opportunity for you to be transparent? So I'm a big believer that every employee has a voice to communicate what they hear, see, and feel, inclusive of what's going on around them. We are not a reality TV show. We are a purpose-driven vehicle of change. So you have to choose. Are you going to be on a reality show? Are you going to be on a vehicle of change? Plain and simple. We need to develop clarity, and we also have to look at conciseness. Coach your manager to structure messages using frameworks like STAR, situation, task, action, result, or what, why, how, model to ensure that clarity is happening. The goal is to reduce misunderstandings by delivering concise and actionable information. Have them practice summarizing complex instructions in 1 to 2 sentences, send feedback, and coach them on it. The next strategy is I want to encourage regular feedback. I want you to guide the manager to implement structured feedback mechanisms. That's weekly team huddles, anonymous suggestion boxes, etc. The goal is to create a culture where communication flows both ways, addressing issues proactively. Start with low-stakes check-ins. What's working well? What needs improvement to build comfort and feedback? Your next strategy is I want you to leverage technology for consistency. So introducing different tools, practice management tools, streamlining updates, task managements, etc. We do this with Monday.com. We're a big believer. Again, they're not willing to pay me for a sponsorship. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you this authentically. Great tool, great resource. Look at it. It's an opportunity to create leaderboards, task management, communication, and more. Ensure that communication is accessible and documented. Reduce reliance on verbal exchanges. Train the manager to use one tool consistently for key updates, then monitor adoption with periodic check-ins. January 28th through the 31st, 2026, Coral Gables, Florida. Your business is on the track. Are you ready to hit top speed? The Growth Code Conference is your pit stop for 4 days of proven strategies, precision leadership tools, and a tuned-up growth plan. Leave the slow lane behind and accelerate toward your best season yet. Register now at growthcodeconference.com. Your next strategy for coaching leaders to improve communication is build emotional intelligence, EQ. Use EQ training to help the manager recognize and adapt to employees' emotional cues during conversations. The goal is to enhance empathy, tailor communication, create a relationship that's built on a reality where the different personalities or different situations can be handled in an optimal way. Use journaling, use reflective exercises, explore how their tone or word choices affect team dynamics. So important. The next strategy, I want you to simulate high-stakes communication. Conduct role plays or simulate challenging scenarios like addressing a team conflict or announcing a policy change. We're going to build confidence in delivering tough messages clearly and professionally. By providing immediate feedback on body language, tone, word choice, we are able to reinforce positive habits. So it's really crucial that we create accountability. Accountability is something that we need to implement with setting measurable communication goals, whether that's biweekly team meetings or responding to emails within 24 hours. I'm a big believer, 24 hours. That's all you get. One business day. I won't even say 24 hours. I would like within 2 hours. I need within one business day, and I want to track progress. Communication's clear. And that's an example of like an email response requirement. So it might be we have team meetings at this, phone calls, text messages are at this, emails are at this, etc. Ensure sustained improvement through regular accountability. That's the goal. Sometimes using a log to document commitments and review those outcomes can be helpful with your follow-up sessions. At the end of the day, we need to model and reinforce positive examples. So share case studies regarding effective communication in similar roles. Encourage your manager to emulate specific behaviors. Provide a tangible benchmark for success, inspiring that confidence. Let them feel that growth. Highlight those wins with them. Highlight the agenda. Highlight how we're going to show progress with each employee. So the impact of, have you ever had that manager that knows everything? I call him a know best manager. It is so crucial for you to identify these know best managers because they do not fit your mold. So the impact when you have a know best manager, someone that thinks they know everything, they stifle team morale and engagement. Employees feel undervalued when their ideas or expertise are constantly ignored, leading to engagement, disengagement, reduced motivation, lower job satisfaction. You get it. In a small practice where team cohesion is critical, this is going to demoralize your workforce. So if you have a manager that's like, no, you guys don't get it. This isn't. No. Let them empower employees. The know best manager is stifling your team morale, your team engagement. I notice a direct correlation of higher turnover rates when the manager is know best, when they think they know everything, when they're right and you're wrong. Talented staff, particularly those with skills, may leave if their contributions are dismissed. Highest turnover is increased at the end of the day when people don't feel valued. And I find a lot of the time employees don't feel valued when they have a manager that thinks they know best. The other thing when you have a know best manager, it reduces innovation and problem solving from staff. That know best attitude stifles collaboration, creativity. It ultimately is limiting the practice's ability to adapt to challenges like changing regulations, client needs, market competition. Who knows better than the employees that are facing it day in and day out? Let your employees lead their voice. Allow your managers to present their data, why they like things, but don't let them allow their way to be the highway. So poor decision-making quality is often occurring when they're disregarding diverse perspectives. Managers are taking on risk when they're making uninformed and biased decisions, such as implementing ineffective workflows, misallocating resources, etc. Let your team be the voice of reason and change. The other impact on a know best manager is it erodes trust and communication. Your staff may hesitate to share feedback or concerns. They may fear dismissal. It creates a culture of silence. It is the opposite of what we want. The other thing is when we have a manager that's know best, I find the client experience is on the decline. Employees who feel unheard may become less proactive in addressing client needs, leading to inconsistent service quality. So, how do we overcome that almighty know best manager flaw? The first thing we need to do, we need to build self-awareness. We need to give them feedback. Use a 360-degree feedback from staff, peers, clients to highlight how the manager's know best behavior is perceived and its impact on the team. The goal is to help the manager recognize their blind spots and the consequences of dismissing others' input. Sometimes we need to implement a voting system where the manager gets their voice heard, but the team votes on the best solution. 2, cultivate a growth mindset. Introduce the concept that a growth mindset, emphasizing learning from others, enhances leadership effectiveness. Shift your manager from a fixed belief to valuing continuous improvement of others, from others. The other is train in active listening and inquiry. Teach active listening techniques. The goal is to enable the manager to genuinely consider and value team contributions. It's important. The next, encourage collaboration, decisive decision making. So introduce frameworks like define, explore, consider, implement, debrief, evaluate to involve the team in your decision making. The next is I want you to model vulnerability and humility. Coach the manager to openly admit when they don't know something, when they need input, when they're wrong. Normalize vulnerability. And my number one goal is this. When I lead, my goal is to say, I appreciate my voice being heard, but I never want to be right for right's sake. So I will fall on my sword when I'm wrong. And at the end of the day, I want everyone to provide an opportunity of perspective, and we can vote on what is the greatest good for the group based on all of the requirements needed to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. And that's important. Some other strategies to overcome this know best flaw: implement structured team input mechanisms, set up regular forums, brainstorming, etc. Reframe expertise as a collective. We are building a collective. Help the manager recognize the specialized knowledge of their team. Shift the perspective to see the team as a value resource rather than the threat to their authority. We need to set measurable behavioral goals. Establish specific trackable goals, such as involve at least 2 members in every major decision this month. Acknowledge a staff idea in every team meeting. These can be tangible accountability goals. Another thing we need to do with this know best manager, we need to address the underlying insecurities. Whether their know best behavior stems from fear of losing control or appearing incompetent, use reflective coaching techniques to get to the root cause. Help the manager build confidence in their leadership without needing to dominate. 10, reinforce positive outcomes. Highlight tangible benefits when the manager embraces collaboration, such as improved team morale, better client outcomes. What are the wins? How are we progressing? What does that positive outcome look like? The goal is to motivate a sustained change by linking new behaviors to practice success. So I remember there was this hospital I worked with, and one of the doctors was getting really low scores on patient satisfaction. And it really came down to the doctor was not spending the time to connect and really align with the patients on a EQ level. And the doctor ultimately was frustrated by my recommendation, but I ultimately said, here's what we're going to do and all this stuff. And I put it in play. I said, do this for me, doc. And the doc said, what? I said, don't waste your money. He said, well, it's not my money. It's the hospital's money. I said, okay, don't waste the hospital's money. Give me 30 days. Do this for 30 days. I want to survey the starting point and the end point from each person that we do this with. And let's see if progress happens. If progress doesn't happen, I'll go your way. How about that? But if progress happens, you go my way. Do we have a deal? And the doc said, I guess so. And at the end, we saw the progress. And I said to the doc, what do you think? And the doc said, I don't like it, but I get it. I said, okay. I said, is there anything I can do to help you like it? And he's like, no, it's just a personality flaw. I said, okay, I'm going to let your personality flaw go as long as we're on, this is the greatest good for your patients and for the practice, for the hospital. Do you agree? Absolutely. I agree. I got that agreement despite the lack of desire to do it. And that was important because the doctor needed at least to feel progress being made, even though the doc preferred not going this methodology. So another flaw I'm seeing is this people pleaser manager. So it's important to identify a people pleaser manager because they will destroy your practice. At the end of the day, people pleasers are not managers. People pleasers are problem creators. And I'm being honest with you because they are enabling the problem to occur and they are pleasing people at the same time. So the people pleaser often is avoiding conflict. They shy away from addressing performance issues, enforcing policies, saying no to staff, clients, fearing disapproval, confrontation. They are overcommitting resources. They agree to employee or client requests, whether it be flexible schedules or discounts without assessing the impact on the practice's resources or profitability. Oh, I put them on a payment plan. No, they shouldn't have come, or we should have had a predefined payment plan policy if we were to go that route. That was not your place. Well, they wanted to come in and I didn't want to stop services. I go, that's a people pleaser mentality. Inconsistent decision-making. Decisions waver based on who they're trying to please, leading to perceived favoritism, a lack of fairness among staff. Another example is they're neglecting business priorities. They prioritize employer-client happiness over critical tasks like financial management, compliance, operational efficiency. The other factor that I see is that they're seeking constant validation. There's a frequent check-in with staff or client. Oh, how are you? Do you need anything? Indicating a need for external approval. The next is difficulty setting boundaries. They struggle to enforce rules or expectations such as denying unreasonable requests, which can lead to staff taking advantage or clients expecting unsustainable accommodations. Emotional exhaustion. They may show signs of burnout from constantly trying to meet everyone's needs as they internalize others' dissatisfaction. So, we just identified a people pleaser manager. Are you ready for this? I was a people pleaser manager. I was. And to be more transparent, I think I am naturally a people pleaser manager, and I am working every day to create boundaries to overcome that. There are pockets of what we said that come easier to me than others. But at the end of the day, I am a people pleaser within reason, but it still has to make sense to the business algorithm. And when someone takes advantage of me, I recognize how can I please others when I get taken advantage of. But this is something a work in progress. So as much as I'm saying like get them out of your practice, recognizing I'm a people pleaser manager. I would not hire myself in some cases. You got to be tough. The idea is if I hire the right people, I can please all my people. So I think I've channeled it into scare the garbage out of them when I hire them so I can please them when I work for them, when they work for me. Truly. Everyone's got their methodology, but it's crucial for you to recognize that because the impact of people-pleasing leadership is an operational inefficiency, a financial strain, team resentment, client expectation mismanagement, and strategic neglect, a focus on short-term versus long-term. And I do think that many aspects of what I've done over the years had these impact. And so I'm always learning and I'm trying to share my deficits so that you don't make the same mistakes that I've made, truly. So when we're coaching a people pleaser manager to prioritize business needs, we need to raise awareness of people pleasing tendencies. We need to reframe leadership as serving the greatest good. We need to teach objective decision-making framework. We need to build confidence in saying no. We need to practice conflict resolution skills. We need to set clear business priorities. We need to establish accountability mechanisms. We need to address the emotional triggers. We need to model balanced leadership examples. And number 10, we need to reinforce business-driven success. You got it. Did you know a 2023 DDI study found that 60% of employees cite poor communication as the most common leadership flaw, leading to a 22% drop in productivity and turnover rising? In the words of Ralph Nader, the function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not more followers. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. Don't forget, together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you love this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.